And tonight we are thrilled to be working with Binance to begin today. We've got as always the Binance flag, which will be available to you if you're clever enough to use it. Later on. All right, I'm ready to get straight to this. We're going to have meetings about the blockchain. All the blockchain, we're a not-for-profit, we're an incorporated association, and we're thrilled. We've got over 3,000 members now, which is long, a couple hundred in the last couple of weeks, which has been fantastic. With the standing crypto event and also with the event tonight. Welcome to all the income sector. Who's first time in the room tonight? Any first time? That's fine. I mean, please accept the audience. So give yourself a Meetup.com is still great for finding what's going on in the local area, and I think that's how some of you discover. So you're very welcome. We're not for profit, 3,000 members. We pride ourselves on being agnostic. We really will talk to anyone. My cash rate is anyone who's doing something illegal. So it doesn't happen by itself. Standing right next to you is a lady who's a grand applause. Renee Sampson. Renee is actually a training chef in previous time, and she brings wonderful compliments and drinks to us. Thank you, Renee. Doesn't happen without a team. We have a lovely developing a single technique. What is our very unique sexual chat? He should volunteer. He came up to me 2 days ago and said, I want to help out. And he said, really, help out. What we need to say, we hear a lot about current industry trends, what's coming up, Bitcoin Reserve and more. I'm sure from next to the panel, we've got some luminaries from the South Queensland scene who are joining us on the panel tonight. But Binance is what we need to say. That was the firestorm of the last couple of years. CP is free again. And the brand is still very, very strong to me. So I think it's really good for guys. And as I've said privately to Liam before, they're always extremely professional to work with. Everyone who I've worked with, from Nick Travis to Harris Campbell, Lee, Aussie Games, who've got here tonight, Orlando, who I've met, Orlando's been giving me years for troubleshooting. They're all ultimate pros. So really thrilled to work with Binance. We announced a few of our sponsors. We've added a few, we're up to 13 this year. We've got 2 new announcements. We announced a number of new ones, for 2025 at the end of last year. We haven't formally announced these 2. Sitting at the back of the room is also Dell who does graphic design called Stereo Synthesis. Definitely check me out. He comes graphic designers. And we also run a startup called Blockchain. We're going to feature Stereo and I are going to shoot that on an A&E of the 24th. About the blockchain application, which is basically Web3 community on steroids. It's true. Web3. So kind of like compared this sort of way, isn't it? But it's going to be down. And we researched, my good friend Kev, who's not here tonight, but he come down last week. Kevin Gibson, if you have Web3 recruiting needs, look up the research. Thanks to all of our sponsors. We've got a couple more who I'm working with at the moment that might come on board, but we're thrilled to have, as I say, 13 sponsors there this year, which make all these events and that lovely food possible. We also have other activities, Aussie.com, but David Haslop in the house tonight. We're thrilled to work with David on the panel. We work with Wayne Innovation, we work with Moving Digital Economy, which will be up next year, we'll talk about in a second, and also Opportunity Social, which is a global movement out of San Francisco. Always keen to grow. If you want to follow us on these social channels, we're building our YouTube presence and X, and also Renee with our socials as well as activities. Renee's looking at Instagram, which is really good for engagement. So I find that really interesting. Crypto crowd very engaged on Instagram. Community Hub put out a newsletter every month on paragraph.xyz. And this really serves to highlight not just our events, but events all around the world that we find are of interest, and particularly interstate in most of the southern state, and also, of course, for Perth. What are the things happening in Perth? So the community hub, you can sign up there. It's a place to paragraph.xyz newsletter. Events. Daniel will be hosting AMA with Sanjay Mehta on AI. So the blockchain AI crossover is obviously really topical. Blockchain can kind of secure and make more certain. I think what AI is doing, AI can make blockchain look more sexy. So I think it's a really interesting section, blockchain AI. And I'm sure we'll be talking about agents eating at lunch. and it's taking over the world. Here's that AMA that I talked about coming up on the 24th. Tune in on Zoom. You can find all these on meetup.com also, and we look at most of them on Liver as well. If you've got us, and we want the final set. And that's an excellent infographic. See, that's an example of the stuff that Celico can do. So, promise to Celico, that's the most new graphic that we can do with our humble resources. There's a graphic by us. That's going to be our next bit, and that's actually each year going on and teams through the idea that coincides with International Women's Day. And we won't get that same day, but it's that week. So during that week, we always have an event that highlights women founders and builders, particularly in swimming. And delighted to have a number of senior science sponsors that actually work. Gabby Lewis from Tufex. We've got Deborah Kocak from Granton, who's an excellent expert, I should say, and great quality, who use it to exist, only to make it profitable. And you'll be a very good friend of us from the Ludo Exchange. That'll be next month. Always looking for more people like Nick. So if anybody has a penchant for helping out with wine glasses or maybe just putting out a couple of beers on the ice, that's always welcome. So, and we're also hoping that we'll see you back here next month. You know, let's hope it's like one night stand. Let's hope that you might come back and spend time with us here in the future. Probably just enough of that jokes out of me. I'm getting a couple of Richard Lawson road. So we're going to hand over to Liam O'Donnell. I think you've seen up those resources. Liam. All right, good guys. Let's jump right into it. Harry, Dave, Rachel, Scott. How is it going? Good. Good stuff. Are we feeling all happy over yesterday? Yes, that was really pretty perfect. Good one, yeah. Okay, good. We've actually got a kid Anyway, let's jump into it. Thank you so much for coming out, guys. And obviously, a massive thanks to all of the blockchain results for putting on the event. We've been sponsoring you guys basically since your inception, and it's great to be back in Brisbane. We've got an excellent panel here tonight to share with you some of their insights, trends, and predictions for 2025. So let's get some alpha, hey guys. But before we jump into the rest of the year, do you guys want to give us a bit of a breakdown of what happened yesterday? What triggered the largest market sell-off was it forever? In crypto, it was, wasn't it? The biggest, it was $2 million worth of liquidations. What happened?
Trump. You're being sensitive.
You're being
sensitive. It always happens. I think that's working. But it was Trump, basically. So, obviously, Trump, if you don't know, Trump imposed some tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. So that's food market, which is quite normal, I think. It's not just crypto markets, like it spooks all financial markets. So we sent a big bounce again today because now they've put a bit of a 30-day pause on these tariffs that he's imposing on these other countries to negotiate things like that. So when things like that happen, it's not just crypto that gets affected. Crypto is still tied up in the rest of the financial market. So it's not specific to our industry. All financial markets get sued when you've got a potential trade war in the part of your head, basically. So yeah, I think that's the main reason.
And we were at first as well, so I think that's kind of the market that despite unusual, right? Like traditionally consider. I think the other characteristic of why yesterday was so tense is just because it's hard to keep good on the side. So that is very important and I think that last year August in Japan where interest rates high, so people students take. And the US was very related like around employment report that students answered the public. Many for a really big question in the market. And I think that was really fun to know what's to come, right? That our market's going to be much more interesting. Doing much more volatile, and crypto is going to play a role kind of in the column and stuff. And what's kind of so fun is that all things say, this day, well, traditional markets are open. think the lens mapping kind of more bearish, so it's really interesting to see. Wow.
I wrote on the just saying that I mean that's saying I have market oh I am in tariffs, so I'm in tariffs. So we have a lot more. I've been doing macro market, but that's that, but it's pretty much that. And there's a little bit of breaking. Yeah, I'm good now. Now there's a lot again. It's don't worry about it. And a lot of the stuff that's not macro is still micro stuff. The cool innovation stuff that's stuff.
I think the name I dropped mostly was it, so I think it was like.
Standpoint.
Nothing correct.
No, you're not even worried. 10% interest, like we're talking about 10% gains in crypto. Like, who cares anymore? But it is a macro trend that shows that it's simply that it's becoming a sophisticated market with a shift in and out of offensive and defensive positions. And Binance guys, like you know very well, people are taking longs and shorts all throughout, and that's going to be the best indicator of what people think. And that's why people are liquidated.
I think that's such an interesting kind of characteristic of that is that it was so much liquidation, but actually not much price movement.
Yeah.
So really characterizes how optimistic the market is and how priced in the future was. Like from optimistic, Trump coming to presidency, crypto is going to go boom time.
100%. Well, let's zoom out a little bit now. I'd love to hear you guys' big picture take on this year. What's going to happen? Are you bullish or are you bearish?
I'm always bullish. I think once the dust settles more or less and Trump's in presidency for a few months, and we have a clearer picture of what kind of president he's going to be, I think financial markets overall will settle down. So when that happens and we enter into a more risk-on environment, then I think you're going to see more growth in Bitcoin. And I think that will happen naturally, even without the strategic reserve that Trump's trying to build under his administration and things like that. So if we find some stability there, and if there is a strategic Bitcoin reserve, then I think not only are we going to see huge price action growth anyway, Bitcoin specifically, from that, but I think you'll find other countries will start to follow suit. So I think the EU, like a lot of Germany, I can't remember, one of the European countries are already saying, well, we're looking at starting a strategic reserve now as well. So I can't remember that. I only read it a couple of days ago. But I think you'll find other countries will start to follow suit there because no one's going to get left behind. No one wants to be first and no one wants to be last. So Bitcoin up.
I'm also super bullish. I think that we have so much more capital to deploy. Like even from an institutional perspective as well. Like,
Do you have capital?
I've been willing for a long time, so but I did get a credit card yesterday. So.
Have you seen there's a guy on Twitter called Sunny not financial advice to anything, who maxes out credit cards by Bitcoin and tracks his progress. That's a really interesting account to follow.
Well, it's about to time horizon, right? Like I think Bitcoin will always win out, but before or after you need to have a credit card. But yeah, I'm super bullish for the year. I think that probably a characteristic of the year though is going to be that inherent volatility. I think that the market is going to be very reactionary. I think that there are so many macroeconomic and geopolitical uncertainties. I really do think that we are in a very skittish period. I think that we are facing a lot of changes that haven't really occurred since we've had a really stable market since after the Second World War, really. Like we've had a really strong set of institutional and kind of global norms. And I think that they're really being disrupted at the moment. And you're seeing like land invasions, like you've seen Rwanda invade the Congo. So that is, I think, such a clear indication of how far global norms are shifting and moving. And I think that markets are going to be very skittish on that because at the end of the day, they're all reliant on regulation and free trade. So I think that I'm bullish on price, but I think it's going to be a long ride.
Yeah, I think that we also on the flip side of that too have an enormous amount of capital coming in from institutions. If we get strategic reserves, it's going to be very price sensitive. So I do agree with you. I think we'll be skittish, but I think it's two sides to that.
Depends on what, it depends on what kind of capital. If you're talking Bitcoin, I think that institutions will help prop up the price because they only balance report quarterly. So I think I've read that, like I know that, and I do have read theories and that, and some people are like, oh, it's not happening, it's enough. So I think that's a bit murky, but I do think that there will be a war there, pressure war. And I think that, to my point earlier, but I got a bit sidetracked, that if you think about Australia, I want to invest my super fund in Bitcoin and I can't. And that's so early. Like, that is so, that I think it's only if you have a self-managed super fund. You can't do it as just like going through government scheme. This is early.
Well, I'm even more bullish than these two. That's three main things. What?
On main point.
Our main points always. No, stable coins, authorizing usage have been trending upwards very, very strongly. More than 100% last year, I believe, was the USDC growth, and USDC 40%. Stablecoin usage will increase because banking is annoying. Absolutely.
This is superior technology.
It's just better. It's just way better. There's that Web3 tooling. It's getting really good. We've got Telegram trading bots like that's the start. We've got some really cool wallet solutions coming out. Passkey abstraction and all sorts of things. Which are getting really, really good. We use graded features, which allow you to do a lot of custodial, which I think will benefit a lot of people in this room, more than the institutions. And the last one is, like ETH has been having the price action is just going to be positive this year. There is some stuff that I know confidentially that'll make price go up, not actually last. But a very good connector. It just hasn't had a run. Sold in mid coins, but ETH's got like the smart contracts or something.
That's your opium.
Yeah, it is good. It is.
Opium or copium. Looking at it yesterday and watching it erase all of its gains from the last year, basically flat in the last 12 months, was wild because I agree with you. I think Solana is the premier casino that ETH has for real staying power long term, and real good application, really interesting financial applications. But let's jump into that now. Bitcoin has been the golden child so far, right? Dominance hit above 60% yesterday. And that was a flash crash, so it's a bit of a pretty up. But overall, we've seen Bitcoin dominance on the rise for the last 2 or more years. And Bitcoin has been down strategic reserve, institution with ETFs. Like even the ETF has been, I think still performed incredibly well for an ETF product, but compared to Bitcoin, it's been definitely a bridesmaid this year. Is Bitcoin decoupling from the rest of crypto, or is this a natural part of the cycle, and will we see alt season again? I think Bitcoin is decoupling, and I think the reason for it is that it's still early in its next run. So, as I was saying before, with the ETFs, the government adoption, pro crypto SEC, all these positive things around Bitcoin specifically, I think you're going to see a lot more capital flow into Bitcoin, and that doesn't mean it pulls capital away from the alts. I think new money will come in and continue to grow Bitcoin, and Bitcoin in itself will become sort of its own asset class within the crypto space anyway. I think so. I think it's decoupling, which isn't a bad thing. Like just because it's decoupling doesn't mean alts won't perform, because alts can still do what they're doing, whether you're in the meme coins or utility coins or whatever it is that you're gambling on. I think they've still got their place in a sense, and they'll still do well if you pick the right one, I guess. But will we see an alt run this year? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think so. I think Bitcoin's got a lot more room to suck the money out of the market for the next 12 months. So I wouldn't say we're going to see a 2017 style altcoin run or a 2021. I just don't think it's in it this year, but hopefully I'm wrong and everyone makes $1 million and everyone's happy.
I think it's definitely decoupling. I would say, but cheaply, that crypto is decoupling from Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin, resilience, and then alts and things like that have followed. For me, it comes down to the value proposition behind them. I view Bitcoin as a global money tree alternative, and I view the rest of the crypto market as more of a business or a product kind of competition. And so in that case, which is why you're seeing so much of the cannibalism and you've kind of seen the disruption, because it's been, when you have companies, you're more akin to stock picking. So you're reliant on the leadership and the internal technology and that type of valuation, in my opinion. And when you look at Bitcoin, the value proposition there is quite different. And that's why you have like nation states and you have institutions pulling in money. In terms of, do I think that there will be like a good, do I think that that will continue? I think yes. And I think it's going to increase actually as well. I think that there are thousands of alts pretty much. I don't even know if you can call them alts, to be honest. There are thousands of like meme coins and things. Shitcoins. I don't know if I can say that. But every single day, like there is like 3,000 or 4,000 of them.
It's over 1 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Nuts. Yeah.
That's shitty, honestly.
So I'm like, there's just not enough liquidity to soak up all of that. So I think people have to be cleverer than they have been in the past with investing. Like before, you might have just been able to like be a bit YOLO, a bit lucky. But I think that was the old cycle. I think this is a new.
Anyone holding XRP might prove you wrong.
I hope I'm wrong.
But I think the point you're making is that
I forgot the question. The question.
is Bitcoin decoupling or do we get it also?
Oh, that's right. I was thinking about it. Sorry, it's been a long day. I think
Keeping the founders out of prison.
I think that a lot of the crypto market was always product led. In that ETH was selling its smart contracts and decentralized computer, and Sol was selling, being mostly online and Bitcoins and whatever it is. The value proposition was, but the value proposition of Bitcoin changed significantly in the last few years, where it went from a payment asset, because it's actually not good at that anymore, as that reserve currency. And that's those discussions that we have. Is really the rhetoric. It's what we've perceived Bitcoin to be, is how we value it. Whereas everything else is sort of kept its inherent stuff. Offset Dave so they one back.
No, I was going to agree with you. I think that what I was saying before, when Bitcoin's going to become a different asset class, I view it more as property than I do currency. So
Yeah, as it should, because it's better for
Exactly.
It's spending.
yeah, it's no longer a currency as such. It's property.
It's an investment grade asset.
People are going to view it.
I think that's sort of interesting. I think that Bitcoin itself has remained the same, but when you think of money as, say, being a shared cultural delusion, the consensus had picked up so much quicker than I even imagined. Like I remember being in 2020 and I was just like, I can't imagine a government ever being interested in this because it's transparent. Like what type of government system would want this? Like the perks of being a government is that you get to print money. And then if you're a dictator, like better, like you can print a machine. So the only method of like government I could really see to have something like Bitcoin is like a benevolent dictator. And then
Depends on the government though. Look at Salvador. Big.
I think that's a benevolent dictator would be my take on that one, which is why I think it's so unusual. And I think that really accelerated and picked up Bitcoin into being that asset class. But I think probably what I was trying to say there was that framing and perceptions around it has changed, but the actual technology has remained the same.
And right. Well, give us your consensus trend predictions for this year. I'm going to ask for your consensus trend predictions and then your contrarian.
What did you predict last year though? Can you do that first?
Oh man, I watched that video like a week ago. We were all pretty bullish and we had a pretty bullish year.
He just wants you to publicly admit that he was right about me.
Yeah, I think
You were right about that. I don't remember picking anyone out. Don't
not even more.
But yeah, consensus trend prediction, sectors, verticals, products, adoption. What is going to happen this year?
That was me. Oh, well, okay. Out of luck.
For your cheekiness at the end of the line.
Yeah. I just get some white stress at the end. Say stuff. Look, strategic reserves we talked about. I don't think they'll gain much traction for the same reasons that Rachel said. There's a lot of transparency and its utility as that reserve asset is only really dependent on investor sentiment at this point, and they don't really value the technology. Other people value the technology the government is possessing the tokens for. So I don't think that will actually progress that far. I think we'll go on about it, but so I'm going so doesn't need.
But I think that there's going to be a lot going on behind the scenes. Like my personal take on it is that governments probably around the world kind of freaking out. They're probably having some type of, if we're not going to do it, we have to have a strategy as to why we're not doing it. And so I think that you're going to see, in my opinion, like Norway is going through like buying MicroStrategy, right, through the sovereign fund. So I think we're going to see a lot of, you know, not overt, but I do think that we'll see like buying.
I don't think they'll be buying, it's sort of just political force that's been forced on them by this new president. Crypto president has forced them to start facing the reality, and it's happening in Australia too, which is great. You know, this election, we're having those discussions. We understand the crypto stuff from last week was excellent. Very fast. But in terms of governments actually adopting it, markets will adopt it much faster. Governments much slower, particularly in this country, where we've had announcements for new laws that want to draft for 15 years, still left unenacted, and they don't care anymore. So they'll talk about it, but once they have the political capital, they may not really want to follow through, so that it sort of relies on constituents to actually do that. Another question again, I mean, random.
Consensus trend predictions.
Consensus of trend predictions.
So I'll add to what you're saying there, because as far
I forget the
as
question.
the strategic reserve goes and government adoption and things like that, that'd be great, right? That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Bullish for the market, especially if other countries start doing it. Awesome. If they don't, at the very least, having better regulation, pro-crypto regulation. So having a pro-crypto chair of the SEC and things like that, those sort of moves, I think, that open up more institutional capital flow into the market is probably more bullish than anything else.
It's probably the banking rule is probably the most bullish thing that US banks can access crypto.
Yeah, definitely. So opening up doors that weren't previously opened as opposed to government adoption itself, I think is going to be the biggest case for growth over the next 2 years. So
I can really add to your point earlier in terms of like the consensus opinion. And in my opinion, you've got blockchain is not, if you're a blockchain company, I don't know if you're really necessarily putting the blockchain first anymore. I think that you're more emphasizing the skills, like the efficiencies that are gained through the use of the technology. And I think that that is quite, like, to me, that's quite a significant shift. And I think that will dictate probably the next 4 years as well, because we might not quite, and I think that's why meme coins have had such a good run, is because you're kind of moving away from some of that like utility function that's kind of going underneath the hood. For example, like I really agree with you that stable coins are going to have huge.
This is the stable coin that you are.
Yeah, but for sure, I might be a little bit biased. But you know, definitely our clients are concerned about efficiency in terms of time and cost. And so they don't necessarily want to use crypto. They don't really care about that. It's more about the utility to them. For my consensus opinion, I would say that this is probably a consensus in the room, that it's going to be really hard to try and find the top of the market. Like I've heard predictions for earlier, I've heard predictions for later, I've heard predictions that it's going to be like another super cycle. And so I think that my prediction is it's going to be really hard to predict. When we're in it, it's going to be like, it's going to end. And I don't feel that yet, which is one of the reasons why I'm so bullish. In fact, I think that yesterday might have been one of those periods of like disbelief where you kind of like, oh shit, like I never thought it was going to happen like this. And of course it's not going to happen like this. And then you get this massive sell-off and kind of fall away right before you see some price action.
Yeah, when you zoom out, you look at the fundamentals of Bitcoin and the fundamental core offerings that the space has and relevant changes. If the market goes down 30% of the day, like I think if you're day trading, obviously that's a big move for you. And if you're looking at this space for the next 5-10 years, you know, it's just one day.
And it's looking more intense, like the geopolitical uncertainty and inflation, like government debt, changing demographics as well, like low birth rate. All of these factors are huge macroeconomic factors that are just not going away. And they're a huge demand, I think, personally, for something like Bitcoin.
What about a contrarian trend prediction? Give us something spicy that's going to make somebody in the audience angry.
It's up easy on the zero.
Excellent.
I'll start this with I'm also a sponsor, so I can upset Liam. But I think centralized exchanges are under severe threat. Unless their product offerings continue to mature in the way people want, and that convenience is really there. There are some really interesting cross-chain things happening, and the only real barrier are those figure one offerings, and those really complicated financial instruments that you can't get on DeFi by their nature and volume. But the volume is still on chain quite a bit. As long as you stay off ETH, you don't melt the wallet with gas. So yeah, there are some really interesting experiments people are doing to put the centralized exchange experience fully on chain, and like they're getting really close in terms of that, swap cross chain instant boom done. No passkey, your passkey instead of private keys. And other sorts of ways to extract your private key away, which is really cool. And there's been a lot of investment into that by even the blockchains themselves and those foundations. Because centralized exchanges should fill that gap of those complex products that are not able to be done, synthetic products or, futures in certain formats and all sorts of things that you just can't get. Or you need to protect investors. So I see exchanges leaning into that niche, and I see on-chain growing more and more because it's getting easier and easier. Gone are the days of like shit MetaMask wallets, to be honest. I haven't opened that thing in ages.
I don't know. I don't think my contrarian opinion is contrarian in this room. But mine would be something along the lines of that Michael Saylor's bearish. Not exactly, he's pretty bullish, but I do think that Bitcoin is so undeveloped. I think it's so unpriced. I was moderating at Crypto Convention last year, and I was asking the panelists what their percentage likelihood is of the US adopting Bitcoin as a strategic reserve. 0. And I think that that's still priced in. There is absolutely no pricing in of the potential there. And I think that is so interesting to me. And I think it probably speaks a bit of the bubble that I kind of circulated and kind of thinking. And there's still so much. And if I think about broader society, broader government, broader regulation, like friends, family, I think that's so undervalued. It's not even registering on so many people's kind of like price action type things. So again, not a very spicy one, not in this room. But to the broader society, I think they'll be a bit, that's bizarre.
Do you have a take on the digital asset stockpile versus the strategic Bitcoin reserve?
Yes and no. Like, I think that it's interesting. And it kind of speaks, you kind of have to talk to a bit of the motivations of the people that are developing it, and to what personal motivations might be. It is quite spicy then, I guess. Like, I think that it should be Bitcoin only reserve. I think that that's the only, I think to do anything else is to be a bit, it shouldn't be at a government treasury level, would be my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think for me, it's a case of pick your poison. So if you're a day trader, for example, then the market's going to hurt you a lot more over the next coming months or years. If you're investing long term for 10 years, does any of this really matter to you? Probably not. And then it's what are you investing in or what are you trading? If you're in and out of Bitcoin or you're just holding Bitcoin, again, you're probably pretty safe. But if you're in meme coins or altcoins or any other shit coin that exists, you're going to be subject to the volatility that comes with it. So picking your poison is going to make a big difference to how you play the next 12 to 24 months of a bull market. And as Rachel was saying before, any kind of massive geopolitical issue that we've got at the moment, we've got wars and, Trump's in power, you just don't know what the guy's going to do. And, you could wake up tomorrow morning and there's news everywhere about, Trump could be shot or anything, you just don't know. And then that's going to impact the financial markets. And if you block out the noise and you are investing long term, then it shouldn't really affect you in a huge way financially. But if you're picking the harder poison, you're trading every day, then you just need to account for that. So that's the only real negative that I can see happening in the coming months is just that unrest and tension throughout the world, especially with the new administration. And it's, if it was any new administration, you'd probably still see similar reactions, but it's just amplified because it's Donald Trump. So
I think you nailed it, that unpredictability kind of aspect. Like, markets really hate unpredictability. That's when you see the price volatility kind of bouncing around. So I think that is so key to the dynamic of this current market. I'd probably add as well in terms of, I do think that there is so much to that. There is, if you think about like supply and demand, there is just only so much capital to deploy, and there are so many opportunities out there now. That trying to find the right one, trying to find the one that's going to give you like the moonshot and things like that. I think that dynamic's changed. I think one of the reasons why it's changed, this is a bit of a tangent here, but I think that you have so much money coming into the space that is so calculated, like they really just know the right marketing, they know that, and they have the connections, they can exchange, and then they pump and dump, right? Like I think that that is a really, that's what happens when you have like a bit of an order market. Sophisticated actors come in and they just make a lot of money off newbies. So I think that's probably another.
The market is getting more sophisticated too, so I think that's been a huge change. If you go back 5 years to now, you used to be able to just start a blockchain for $70 on the East network, pay some Twitter influencer 40 grand, and the thing would pump and you'd make millions and millions of dollars, and then
Those were the days.
that's the easy days. We're just talking about it now. So I think the market is getting more sophisticated. We're nowhere near where we need to be, absolutely not, but we're on our way there.
That's fun though. Is that good or bad? Like I kind of love that old school like crypto ethos, which is basically like just fun, right? There's a reason why I'm in the industry as well. I like it. I think it's dynamic. And I think there is a risk there to that kind of like when you have a lot of money, you can just come in and like basically rip off someone else's convention with open source, right?
That's also feeding into that decoupling of Bitcoin becoming an asset class of its own. If you want to have fun, go to alts, but if you want to invest long-term strategically, go to Bitcoin.
I agree with that.
Cool, guys. We might open up for some audience questions.
You want me to do the writing?
I love doing it.
Matt loves the writing.
Any questions? Oh, Tommy Gordon. Let's go first. Dibs.
Written to Harry for centralized exchange.
That's exactly.
Yeah, that was rough. I got one of this.
Hurry. First of all, it's also agree that on-chain activity, you can't get away from it. It's growing and growing. I agree decentralized exchanges will lean into that model, and there'll be a kind of a hybrid version of what decentralized exchanges do and what centralized exchanges do. I think it's a no-brainer. How do you think?
Is the great perfect manner.
How do you think, I guess, from a consumer protection perspective and a regulatory perspective, how do you see that working for a decentralized model? Because that's really the question mark, and we mentioned fiat on-ramp thing as well. Like that's, I think that will be solved if it's not solved already.
Yeah.
How do the DEXs, the people that run them and build them and work in them every day, protect their businesses when the heavy-handed regulation and consumer protection will relate?
It's coming. As someone who, strategically helps a lot of these companies set up their international structures so they can issue tokens compliantly, because you can't do it here. Not without paying a lot of tax and getting assets to kick in the teeth. Then all those countries are getting vast legislation. They're getting requirements to register your token. So you can't just issue a token on the blockchain anonymously anymore, because you've got those chain analysis tools that are tracking it down, and they do it pretty well. Like if you do like a little scam like that teenage kid who did it on Pump Fund and someone stole his dog, like yeah, sure, that's like not so serious, 50 grand. But like you've got some serious bad actors out there, and they're getting hunted down and they're getting prosecuted. Some of them are sexy stories that they post on chain analysis LinkedIn page, which I always like to see, and other times it just happens. But Safe Shelves is getting vast regime. It's in force already. BVI's had it for a while. It's been firmed up. Cayman's has got a very intense one. Vast for registering over there. So if you're going to issue tokens, like you're on the run. If you want to issue shitty tokens, you're on the run. Because there's jurisdictions where you can really do that. They're getting smaller and smaller. It's just not like a viable thing to issue a coin and rip off investors anymore, because there's a million coins a week that come. So a lot of those low rate ones, they just don't get very far anymore. Like I'm seeing a lot less rug pulls because people just aren't buying into it anymore. They're buying in much smaller amounts, and the economies of scale just fall over. But the regulation is coming at a global-ish scale, like very slowly and very coordinated. But look, if the Caribbean islands are going to like start looking down token issuers, it's coming. It is happening.
Martin. Next question, please. Please name who your question is for, and best question wins a swag box.
Thank you for tomorrow.
Pick one.
Yes, okay. Wait a minute. I've often guess I'm seeing that there's been large accumulation of Bitcoin by whales. And I'm in two minds about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Does anyone have anyone got any underlying thoughts on why they're accumulating? Is it just for absolute money grab, or is there something more sinister maybe? Or is it, do they not believe Bitcoin? What's underneath for these guys thinking?
I think it's really simple. Bitcoin is the highest asset, it's the alpha asset, and it's eating all of the other assets. And there's more smart money that is taking the time to research Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not simple, it's not tangible, it's not easy to understand. So it takes a fair bit of personal or professional investment to get there. But once you're there, you understand what it is and the place that it's taking in the world. I think it becomes a very obvious investment opportunity, or it fills a very obvious place in a sophisticated portfolio. And I think smart money is realizing that. I think institutions are realizing that. I think governments are now starting to realize that as well. Sell more over time. And very simply, people are realizing that they're underallocated. And so they're building up allocations. Whales with a lot of money, they have sophisticated strategies. They are definitely not buying Bitcoin as their first investment. And they're recognizing that globally there's a big opportunity, there's a big shift in capital from physical to digital, and they're positioning accordingly. Take it away. Who's your question for?
Second, no, sorry. I might as well give it to you because I don't know the rules anyway.
Dave, Rachel,
My postulation was this. Given the narrative that Bitcoin is digital gold and that gold is owned by poor people, and the value of any asset is only for other people are prepared to pay for it. So it is faith, whether it's gold or it's Bitcoin. Who are the old people going to sell their gold to?
Who wants to take that question?
It does for you.
I mean, like every investment is a speculation, right? And I think there is no such thing as intrinsic value. I think intrinsic value is a construct, is a silly idea in and of itself. So you're right, like there are a lot of legacy assets that are going to be looking for places to go. But I think the one thing that you can bet pretty reliably on is the expansion of fiat monetary supply. And as a result, I think there's going to be a lot of money to find homes. I don't think gold is going to disappear as an asset class either, but it's about what asset class or asset has the strongest fundamentals, has the scarcest supply, has the most advantageous features and benefits. And I think when you look at that, and the smart money looks at that, and they see the advantage of Bitcoin over gold, that's why we see Bitcoin outperforming gold. So we see Bitcoin market cap increasing faster than market cap of gold. That's why you look at Saylor's outline of all of the assets, and you see Bitcoin up in the little corner. And he talks about predicting that digital capital trend is starting to eat the rest of that chart. So I think there's going to be plenty of money to go around, but I think the smartest money will continue to flow into the hardest asset.
Yeah,
Take it away. Who's your question for? Please go on.
Question for Rachel. Yeah, speaking of gold, before I get into that, but following on from the gold question, you mentioned there's a lot of sophisticated money going into the market. How can the average, I guess, crypto investor become a bit more sophisticated in the way they invest? And by that I mean, is there any approach you're aware of around hedging against losses? Because we're going into a volatile market. And I can count, yes, some people may be getting a heart attack seeing what happened yesterday. So is there any, I guess, based on your views or experiences, how we can hedge against those big swings so that we can ride the waves to where it needs to go, to the moon?
Yeah, there are probably two main things I would always consider. The first is your asset allocation. So, and think about your whole portfolio very holistically. So think about like if you're a property, that's a component of it. If you don't, if you, whatever you have, basically put it into a pie graph and really slice it down and include everything, include your super, go right down into what equities you're into and what categories they are. And by that gives you the confidence to go into the market and know that you're not risking any more than you can afford to lose. And the other thing that I would probably focus on as well is understanding your psychological risk profile. That I think is so undervalued and underrated. I think probably what you're touching upon is, of course, day trading. And I think that day trading is a lot of the time defeated by your brain, right? Like, and one of the factors for that is not understanding your psychological risk profile. So whenever I talk about investing, I would always say, like, understand your risk tolerance, because there's no point being a day trader if it really stresses you out and you can't sleep and you're up all night, because I don't think you'll find success that way until you can moderate your mentality. So I don't know if that's quite the answer you're looking for. There are of course a lot of mechanisms on platforms and things like that to avoid stop losses. But I think fundamentally, if you really understand your risk allocation and then your mentality, then it's harder to go wrong.
Any more questions from females? That was an excellent answer. Thank you, Rachel. I don't want to take over here. We'll go to Ray in a minute. Maybe we'll do the last two. Hurrah. Any questions from females? I always like to give the ladies a chance, please. Ray travels. I met Ray 8 years ago on the CRM meeting. You're old ladies. Dynamics, it was. Oh, Margaret, sorry, Ray. Two-thirds of Margaret.
I'm going to give a question to Harry because he hasn't had. Big bonds over 10 years.
The way it's trending right now, it's achieved that investment grade status. So it will cycle through and track overall financial markets, such as, the Nasdaq's been trending upwards for 60 plus years, 80 plus years, whatever it is now. So I think it will simply just follow that narrative wherever it goes. The cycle will continue to happen, but if the US economy is going to grow, because that's effectively what it's going to come out of, is cycle out of those US stock assets and other assets that are trying to invested into Bitcoin. If those assets grow, then they'll reallocate that to Bitcoin. And those price,
Just a number.
there's the price, man. Shit. They'll never lock me down with that. You give us, but it'll trend in the next 10 years the same way that the US economy trends. Let's say that it goes up, it'll go up. That's a good answer. Nothing will up or down. That's
Last question to Ray. Right?
Okay, you said a good question gets you back. So, what do you think about the 10 years? So we.
Oh, it's for me. Oh, sorry.
It's actually it's going to be in because you've exchange. Sorry, I'm rattling on the top. When Ethereum 2 were looked at unexpected gradient algorithms, it's consciously avoided the NIST, National Institute of Standards Technology, quantum computing resilient algorithms. With that, as quantum computing extends and continues on, are there any murmurings, speculations and so on, where quantum computing could potentially get to a degree of sophistication that can compromise a variety of the blockchain keys, their wallet security?
Great question. I mean, way above my technical head on quantum computing specifically, but what I have read and the stance that I take is that, first of all, hacking, let's just call it hacking, right? Rather than hacking. Hacking Bitcoin is probably not the first thing you'd go and do, because if you've got a quantum computer and you have a head and shoulders advantage over everybody else in the world, which is the scenario where you would have genuine security to this, everybody has access to the technology. And I think there will be Brinkle level upgrades made. I think it will be resisted by because they'll be incremental. We're talking about a scenario where one individual party has head and shoulders quantum computing ability above everything else and gives them an advantage that will allow them to execute an attack. If you have any funds in Bitcoin, there is no incentive to go after the protocol, right? So it needs to be an external actor And that's a scenario where maybe that could happen with a state or a specific organisation develops something. Either way, I think there's a lot of wriggle room around it. But the point that I want to make is that I don't think Bitcoin's the first place you go. There are a lot of state services, there are a lot of banks. There's a lot of different ways that you could go ahead and use that specific power to profit rather than destroy a network of economic value that either you had invested in and so you lose, or if you have no investment in, what's your incentive to destroy that network? I mean, if you extend and extrapolate that far enough, then I think quantum computing is probably something we're going to have to face. And it could be sooner, it could be later. I'll leave the specifics to much more technical people, but that's kind of how I look at it. And I also think with open source cycle models, we have the ability for the best people in the world to work on that and make them quantum resistant. So will it be a problem? I think probably yes. Do I know when?
Yeah, my motivation was to prevent nation state disruptions, especially if the US has a reserve and China doesn't. Yeah, I'll send
That was a supplementary, but that was good.
We'll do one more quick question.
Oh, there is someone?
Okay, very really looks like you have really nice time.
Yeah, it should also be like, also with Binance would address like the, like the PID on-ramp, is a pressure set or something?
Oh, we'd love to have this year, we're working on it, hoping that you'll have us still. Take that one. Cool, all right.